Let's go down.
All right. Candace Moore, alcoholic, everyone. We are back. Woodstock West 2020 is going down right now. So I'm just excited. This is, for me, what I love. It's the only way I'm able to stay here, right? And I've been here for a few days to have friends that are a part of this, from the people who are speaking to those of you who are supporting. It takes all of us, right? We are in the midst of a symphony. All the pieces are coming together. This is how we have a spiritual awakening. It is a process, not an event. I heard that last night. I didn't make it up. So we are on 6 and 7. And, you know, they say you used it 3 times, it's yours, but I'm all right. I have enough of my own. Anyway, so my friend Larry T is going to share on 6 and 7 today. I'm going to read for you. Let me just, because there have been a lot of private messages. So the Facebook page, we don't have the link available. However, www.woodstockwest.biz is available, and that is where you will also be able to get the link to the speakers and the link to the Woodstock West Facebook page. So please keep that. I put it in the chat. I will put it in again. Woodstock West 2021, May 15th through 17th. So make sure you register early. We hope to all be here in person. Welcome to our new friends. Welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. Make sure you're getting numbers and connecting. Reach out to the speakers. They're members first, right? Yes. Okay. So this is page 76 of the Big Book. If we can answer to our satisfaction, we then look at step 6. We have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable? Can he now take them all, every one? If we still cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. When ready, we say something like this: My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and to my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. We have then completed step 7, and so I introduce my dear friend, Larry T.
Thank you, Candace. Right out of the gate, I want to thank this committee and everybody involved for inviting me to come out and be with you guys and to be part of this event. And, you know, it's amazing what you can do with defects of character. Sometimes you can put them to good use. I am not much of a computer fella, and I didn't know how to work these cameras and stuff, but I sponsored a couple guys who had problems in this area, and boy, they got me shaped right up here. They've got this thing going, and you know, I'll have a chiffon corsage on pretty soon, and they got the cameras going, and so I'm happy to be with you. And another thing that I'd like to take care of right now is I want to wish my lovely wife a happy anniversary. It's her 22nd year married, and I asked Rosie if she'd like to go on the Zoom with me, and she said no, she'd rather clean her sister's drawers out. So she had better things to do than this. And actually, I love these steps because of my problem with them. All through the book Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill starts giving me hints about things that may get in the way of my usefulness. And way over there on 61, he says, what is his basic trouble? Is he not really a self-seeker even when he's trying to be kind? I mean, he's getting me right away. He knows what he's dealing with. And then when I was done with my inventory and with my sponsor, I was about a little over 90 days. And me and my sponsor, Don Adamson, took a walk, and I started reading this stuff. And it was amazing because we did the final couple pages. We were in Denny's, and Don had about 5 or 6 years, and I knew he was working with a lot of guys, you know, but I guess I was the only one he'd gotten this far, you know. And we were in Denny's and over there in Hawthorne, and we just got done with the inventory, and he said, "Give me a minute." And he got up from the booth and he went over to the payphone right behind the booth we were at. And he got a hold of his sponsor, Dave Barge. And he said, "Okay, Dave, he's done with the inventory. What do I do now?" And so David told him what to do. And Don came back and told me to take this inventory and go home. And at the bottom of page 75, I would read, "Returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour. Carefully reviewing what we have done, we thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know him better. Taking this book down from our shelf, we turn to the page which contains the 12 steps, carefully reading the first 5 proposals. We ask if we have omitted anything, for we are building an arch through which we shall walk a free man. Is our work solid so far? Are the stones properly in place? Have we skimped on the cement put in the foundation? And have we tried to make mortar without sand?" And then he, you know, we do exactly what Candace just read. If we can answer to our satisfaction, we then look at step 6. We have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all these things that we have admitted are objectionable? And can he take them all, every one? If we still cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. And like Candace said, when we were ready in step 7, "My Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect or character that stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen." When I was new in Alcoholics Anonymous, I heard my sponsor tell me that I can't live the way I used to live and expect to stay sober. And it's been my experience that all over this AA world of ours, I've seen people busting their chops, working on their defects of character. I'm going to work on this, and I'm going to work on that, and I'm going to work on this. And what happens is they wind up spending just as much time working them as they were obsessed with them. Either way, they're still giving that defective character all the attention. I have never gotten rid of a defective character by working on them. There is one answer to all problems. Trust God, clean house, and work with others. Every defective character that has ever budged in my life had nothing to do with me working on it. It had to do with me working with another alcoholic. The miracle of identification. And if you're new in Alcoholics Anonymous, or even if you're not new, and you're suffering with these things that make you feel different, I beg of you to find somebody in these rooms, somebody that you can talk to about feeling different. Because it's not that you feel different that's going to cause your problem. It's not letting anybody in on it. And I guarantee you, man, there is nothing that you've done that's going to shock the people on this call right now. If it hasn't been done by the people on this call, it just hasn't been thought of yet. You know, you are not going to shock it. Get it out of your head. Learn to start telling, telling on yourself and let folks in on this stuff. You know, I tell you, when I was reading my inventory, and again, we're back to that self-seeking, you know, even when we're trying to be kind, there was always a hook, you know. all these, the 7 deadly sins, what we're doing now is Bill's getting us ready. Bill's getting us ready right now. Because that man that you guys talked about in step 1, and the man was at the end of step 5 just earlier, he is now getting ready to be a whole different guy. Not at once, probably, like most of us, but right now he's getting you ready. He is getting you ready right now, because you're going to go out there and you're going to have to start doing some of the hardest things that you've ever done in your life. And that is go out there and take your place in this world. Go out there and find yourself and start making amends. And I guarantee you something. There is a huge difference between that guy on day 1 and that man's that getting ready to pound on that door and make his amends or write that letter. There is a shift. And it is in these 2 steps, even though they say there's 2 little paragraphs where it says that we make men out of the boys, And I got sober when I was 30 years old. Started drinking when I was 11. Had wonderful folks. Had beautiful parents. I was born in Detroit. And was brought up in a little foster home and an orphanage and stuff like that. And they came out to California, and we stayed out in Gardena, and my mom was a beautiful lady, And on that inventory, I would see what I would do with folks like my mom and dad, and what I would do with their kindness to me and their love. I never want to forget what it was like to be about 17 years old and be put away for a small period of time. And then when I got out, they brought me back to the South Bay Courthouse. And I was supposed to go in there and do whatever you do. And I ran back into the old neighborhood. And that was a Monday. And on that following Thursday, I showed up at my mom's place of business at about 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. One more time unannounced. And she's working in the dry cleaners. And she works in the dry cleaners during the week, and she cleans people's houses on the weekend. And I'm deathly ashamed of her, and I make fun of her. And I'm in this parking lot, and she's about 50 yards away, the storefront, the dry cleaners. It's about 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. And I got my drunken mud on. I got my filth and my disgust, and as Wino Joe used to call, the habiliments of despair. But I got one thing on my mind, is I'm hiding behind this parked car in the rain. And I'm looking at that window of that dry cleaners, and I'm waiting for that last customer to come out there so I can make a move on my mom. And I go walking through that rain as if it was yesterday. And I see my bare feet and my filth going in there to do what I always do. And I opened up that door, and that little brass bell hit that glass door, and my mom turned around and she made that oh so familiar sound. She, oh my God, where you been, Larry? Where you been? And then she went over to her wallet, and she grabbed $1 and $2, and I grabbed that money and I ran off to Wilmington, where I was going to die. Now the thing that brings it home to me this afternoon is you take this same man, sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, with my so-called desperation and willing to go to any length. And I need to ask you folks something. How come when my life depends on it, if you were to put a secretary of that meeting, that same distance as me and my mom in that parking lot, how come when my life depends on it, I can't walk that distance and ask a secretary of a meeting for a job in that meeting that's going to save my life? But I can walk that distance time and time and time again and use my mom and folks like her. And how come I can't walk that same distance and ask a man for a job in a meeting that's going to save my life? And if I can find that thing that keeps me from serving you, I will have found the key to life. Now, the reason why these jobs and the meetings are so important to me is for one reason and one reason only. I will never get so sober that I can't get drunk again. But I can get so drunk that I can't make it back. And I never want to forget what I used to be like. I would never want to forget what happened to me and what I'm like today. I never want to forget the people that were on my inventory who showered me with kindness and love, and how I would use that to be self-seeking. Even when I was kind, it says, hell, I'm not kind unless I am self-seeking. There's always a hook to me being nice to folks. Always a hook for me doing anything, you know. And it started with my precious little mom. And it didn't happen one time. Hell, the older I got, the more I did it, you know. And that's why it's so important that I find whatever defect it is that keeps me from being useful. And like I said, these defects of character that I had, my pride and my arrogance, and having two beautiful parents who were brought up in the streets and the ghettos of Detroit, and they both worked so hard, 2 and 3 jobs, just so me and my 2 little sisters would never have to want for anything. And we didn't. And there I would sit. There I would sit with my sense of entitlement. That just because I'm somebody's son, that I deserve everything without having to earn it. That just because I showed up and I'm your son, and I'm your only son, I'm whatever, that I don't have to do what everybody else has to do. That it should all be given to me. I'm a something for nothing guy. All my life I've had my hand out. My entire life. What are you going to do for me? Who's going to give it to me? And this sense of entitlement would follow me every step of the way in my life, even today in Alcoholics Anonymous. For years, I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. From 1975 to 1982, I would slide in and out of AA. And the biggest lie that I was telling myself was that I was coming in and out of AA. I hadn't touched AA. I'd done what I've been doing my entire life since I was 13. I sat in rooms of the church, of the county, of the city, of the government, of the hospitals, waiting for you to do something for me. I've had my hand out my entire life. And what I was waiting to be done to, God was waiting to do through me. There's a miracle here. Things happen here in Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's only by working with newcomers and working with other people in Alcoholics Anonymous that these defects of character that were blinding me and keeping me from being useful would be budged at all. This, this envy that I've had my entire life, this constant state of envy and needing recognition, it just, I had here you go. I was about 15 years sober. Got sober in 1982, May 2nd, 1982. I'm 38 years sober. And I'm about 15 years sober. And I've got this, my sister has this little son, my nephew. And I've always wanted to be a cool uncle. I had an Uncle Jack to this day, and he was cool. He used to take me down to the Mexican bars in the east side of LA and say, he was a great guy, still is. And now I got this little nephew, and I'm his uncle. And he's growing up, and I tell you, there's one thing that I noticed is that there is nothing more loving than a grandfather and a grandkid. There's something going on there. And I've been chasing my dad's affection my entire life. I've been wanting my dad's approval ever since I started doing disapproving things. I was afraid of him. And I noticed that this little guy was getting my dad's approval. And my dad loved him. And my dad would go to his baseball games. And my dad would go to his soccer tournaments. And my dad would take him for rides, and him and little Ryan were in the car. And this kid loved me, man. He would laugh at everything I said, and he was just fun to be around with. And I was envious of him. I was jealous of him, man. He was stealing my thunder from my dad, moving in on my territory, right? A grown-ass man. And this happened as, you know, the kid got older, the more attention he got, good-looking kid, and, you know, doing well in school, something that I never did. And boy, he got the old man's eye, man. And he was going to graduate from college, you know, and he was up there in Northern California. And boy, my dad was making a fuss of it. Oh, God, it was just eating me up alive, you know. And the day before the graduation, he died on a basketball court. He just he keeled over and died, that little guy. And I didn't have to worry about Ryan anymore. I didn't have to worry about getting my dad's attention anymore. The problem had been removed. My step 7 says that I humbly ask him to remove me of these defects of character. Humbly ask him to remove these defects of character. Why humbly? Why humbly? Why can't we just ask him? Why humbly? For the same reason that he left the obsession to drink. For me, all my life, since the time I was 13 till the time I was 30, people have been trying to talk me into being an alcoholic. They've been trying to convince me. They had the literature, they had pictures, they had the data, they had the words. If you would just do this, Larry, if you would just do, and they were hell-bent on talking me into being an alcoholic. And I am so glad they couldn't do that. I am so glad they couldn't do that, because they would rob me of the most divining moment of my life. And you and me know when that is. When else have we heard that word humbly? When we conceded to our innermost self that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. When I humbled myself at that level, I knew then on the streets of Wilmington, when this happened to me, that I was brushing shoulders with a power greater than myself. And maybe, just maybe, that word humbly is because with some of the folks like me, that maybe some of these defects won't be removed until they were at that level. That maybe they got to get my attention. And it wasn't until I got to Alcoholics Anonymous that you told me that it's possible that you won't have to rob a bank to get rid of your, your greed for money or anything, that we can cut them off at a certain level, and that we don't have to wait for them to get that bad, And thank God that we lead by example. There is nothing more useless than a perfect person. What are you going to do with them? You can't use them in AA. This is the land of imperfection. It is a perfect program for imperfect people. And the highest I'm ever going to get here is sober, basic human being, active member of my own home group. All my life, I've been seeking perfection. In you, never in me. You better have it on, you know what I mean? And only in Alcoholics Anonymous that they had taught me that maybe I don't have to wait for these defects of character to be at that level, And with my sister, this need for recognition that I had come up, just not too long ago, not till next couple years ago. My beautiful little mom passed away. But because of people in Alcoholics Anonymous, I was able to be in that window that a lot of us have to visit. And that is when we start taking care of our folks. We have that window where maybe they're in a nursing home or they're going to a nursing home. and we start taking care of our folks, you know. And I was doing that with my mom. Oh, I love that window with my mom. I love that window with my mom. I got to do the thing that I love to do the most, and that's introduce myself to her every day, you know. But I got to take care of my mom. I was so happy to do that. And yet I had this sister. And sometimes these little resentments dig in, man. And she lived a mile or two away, and she wouldn't come over and help. And do you know that to this day, whenever I'm talking to somebody about that, that'll come up? That I still try to get recognition for that and let her in on it, you know, why she didn't do that. That petty, you know, that petty I can get, you know, where I've got to have, why can't we just do things for fun and for free? Why do they always got to have a hook on them, Larry? You know, why do you always got to have a pat on the back for doing what you're supposed to be doing anyway? You know, and, you know, my little daughter, my precious daughter, you know, I had to leave her when she was 2 years old because of a divorce. And again, this is why I am so happy that we lead by example here. Because I was surrounded, my sponsor was going through a divorce, and my first sponsor was going through a divorce, and a couple guys in our group and stuff like that. And it showed me that you don't have to leave AA no matter what's going on around you. And I had to do the hardest thing that I was going to have to do for a while, and that is to leave my precious daughter, Lauren, at 2 years old. Because of my behavior with the wife. And I didn't want to gamble on maybe that getting better or not. I didn't want to gamble, and things were getting too nuts. And I just hoped that my daughter would never forget me. And it was the Women in Alcoholics Anonymous who told me that you may not be somebody's husband anymore, but you're always going to be somebody's father. Don't you ever let that little girl wonder where you're at. If you can go to Ohio, if you can go to Idaho, if you can go anywhere to do your AA commitments, why can't you drive 6 hours to go see your daughter in Arizona? What's more spiritual? And I took your advice. And I didn't want that little girl to forgive me. I never wanted her to forgive me. And I would make those drives a couple times a month, a couple times a year, so that I would see that little girl and be with her and spend time with her, you know. And it was bothering real bad. I'll never forget this. It got to the point when she was about 8 years old, and I was riding back from New Mexico with Clancy, and I was telling him about this. My sponsor told me to talk to him. He was on his way to Sacramento, and me and Rosie were riding back to New Mexico with Clance, and I was telling him about this, and he says, well, tell me about your little girl. How old is she? And 9 years old. And he said, He says, how's she doing in school? Oh, she's doing great. She's doing absolutely great, you know, and she's intelligent. And, you know, he says, well, does she get along with other kids? I said, oh, yeah, she's got a host of friends, and she's well-liked. And she goes, what's his basic demeanor, Larry? Is she depressed? Does she hide out? And I said, no, Clarence, she's very outgoing and loving and just a happy little girl. And I says, I just got to talk to her about this and let her know what happened, you know. And he says, well, why in the hell do you want to go over there and ruin all this? He says, when she gets curious about what happened, she'll ask you. But for right now, just go over there and be a good dad and do what you're supposed to do. And quit bringing up your sad tale to people, you know. Thank God for Alcoholics Anonymous and people like that. And, you know, I tell you, this is where consistency. This is why I was brought up in an Alcoholics Anonymous atmosphere where consistency was very important. Consistency in meetings, consistency in phone calls, consistency in working with others and stuff like that. You know, that no matter what, your primary purpose is to stay sober and get to your meetings, you know. And 2 years ago, my first wife started drinking again. And after about 6 months of drinking, she got wet brain. And she began to die and wither away, and she got dementia. And my daughter was taking care of her at the same time I was taking care of my mother. And we would have these talks about taking care and being useful. And when her mom passed, we were talking, and I said, I can't believe your strength. I can't believe your courage, how you, every day you would go over there and sit with your mom. He says, Daddy, she said, I didn't want her to maybe have a lucid moment and look around and find no one there and feel like she was forgotten. But she says, I got that from you because you kept showing up and you never forgot me, Daddy. And you taught me so much by doing that. I didn't know she saved up all of the postcards that I would send her from the conferences and place like that. I didn't know she would save those little letters and stuff like that, but she did. And I remember being 10 years old and my pride got in the way, 10 years sober, my pride got in the way one more time of trying to help Lauren with her homework. And I'm over there visiting her. And I got mad at this problem that we were working on together because I wasn't smart enough to answer it for her. She's given me 10-year-olds, 4th and 5th grade homework, and I don't have an answer. So instead of trying to find the answer, I got mad at my little girl. So I wouldn't look bad. And I'm taking a 5th step with a man that I sponsored, Jonesy, up in Idaho. And he's telling me the problems that he's having with his daughter. He says, I can't figure it out, Spons. Every time we sit down to do homework, we have these huge arguments and we wind up splitting. And she's in the other room and I'm in the other room. I don't know what's going on. And I started talking to Jonesy, and sure enough, she was giving him algebra. And old Jonesy don't know nothing about algebra. But instead of being honest in that situation, he did what I did. There is a place for our past. Our past is our greatest asset. For years in Alcoholics Anonymous, I was ashamed of my past. Before I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, there's a man that's going to be talking at your meeting. And when I was, maybe 3 or 4 weeks sober, I went down to the Hawthorne Birch Club. And the first man that I was to hear would be a man named Jerome. And Jerome told my story. He had been to the same places. He'd suffered that alcoholic torture that hits me and you when we're sober. And there he was. And made my first identification with Jerome, I never want to forget that. Never want to forget that. I never want to forget how my defects, and I was under the illusion that the longer you stay sober, the least tempted you're going to be with your defects and your obsessions of the mind. If I leave my defects unintended long enough, they will become obsessions. And because what happens to me is my biggest relief from living, now that I'm sober, has always been that I grow this relief finder when I'm sober, and I always start seeking relief from non-AA approved stuff. Because I'm talking to my defects. I'm letting my defects run my life, And I remember 7, 8, or 9 years sober. The greed hits me. my greed hits me. And I'm going through this divorce, and I can't hold a job. My entitlement is getting in the way of me holding a job. My sloth is getting in the way of me holding a job. And it's all turning upside down. I'm 7, 8, 9 years sober, you know, and I'm more concerned about having a material experience than I am having a spiritual experience. You understand what I'm saying? My life is getting upside down. I'm looking all around and I'm starting that comparing. I'm seeing people with cars and homes and stuff and wondering that, man, I'm all upside down here. What's going on with me? I got to start, you know, spending more time trying to do it. And at the same time, I've got this greed going on in my life, and I can't hold a job. And when you're not working a program, the only way to deal with any resentment is you get even with that person. And I'm resenting that first wife. And the only way that I'm going to get even with her is I'm not going to pay her a nickel. I'm going to stay poor at her is what I'm going to do, right? And then I'm going to pick up my little girl for Daddy and Daughter Day. And my little daughter comes running over to me and she hops up in my arms and she's got holes in her socks. She's got holes in her little dresses. And that's my fault. That's my fault. Because I'm too busy trying to be right. I'm too busy trying to get even. And my defects are running my life again. And I can't talk to my sponsor because my sponsor told me before I'm hooking up with this lady and my sponsor told me it's not a good idea. And I told him, I left a couple weeks and I went back to him and I told him and he says, I don't think it's a sound idea, son. And I said, you know, sponsor, I don't think you understand. He says, Larry, it's not a sound idea. And I came back to him in a couple more weeks. Sponsor, you know, me and this gal, you know, we're hitting it off. I'm thinking love here, you know. He says, Larry, I don't think it's a sound idea, son. And I left that, and 2 weeks later, I moved in with that lady and lived out in Sun Valley, out there in the Pacoima area. And then I had to start defending my decision. And I could no longer talk to my sponsor because if I was to bring him a problem, I know he would say, well, if you weren't with this thing over here, you wouldn't have these problems. And so I had to be right about something that was killing me. It was eating my lunch. I was no longer showing up for work. I was backing out of my AA stuff. I wasn't consistent in my life. And at 9 years sober, 10 years sober, I told my sponsor what was going on. The cops were coming over and they were breaking up fights and stuff like that. And he said, why don't you come back home, son? Why don't you come back home, son? Why don't you put all your stuff in your little bonds bag and just come back home and get a little hotel and come back? And I did. I don't know how he knew I had a bonds bag, but I got my little bonds bag and popped my little stuff in there and came back home. And I made a surrender. I was humbled one more time. That I seen that I couldn't be wrong with people and right with God. That it wasn't about me trying to be perfect and all that. But I was able to humbly ask him. Because now I've got to do what they told me to do in the third step. Is he the director? Is he the principal? Is he the employer and you're the employee? Whatever it is. When we sincerely took a position, what's your position going to be, Larry? Are you in or are you out? Are you going to trust him? Or are you going to keep trying to do this nonsense? This complacency that hits me. You know, self-satisfied with life while in the midst of danger. The house is burning and you want to vacuum. Why don't you come back home? There is one answer to all problems. Trust God, clean house, and work with it. And the thing that happened to Bill suddenly, I believe he's hoping will happen to me gradually. That I'll be inspired to work with other alcoholics. You can only tell a person for so long what to do. I am not one of the folks who can stay sober on desperation. That brought me here. And it certainly brought me to the porch of Alcoholics Anonymous. But desperation to me is like any other emotion that I have. And after about 2 months, it wears off. And if I don't replace desperation with inspiration, I'm a dead man. And the only thing that's been able to inspire me is being with you. Something happened to me when I came back. My sponsor, Johnny, told me, he says, Larry, seek ye first the kingdom, son. I don't know, Pop, I don't know what you're talking about. I've been running from God my entire life. He's the reason I am. I've been blaming him for everything. I spent my whole life trying to prove that God didn't exist. And then it dawned on me in Alcoholics Anonymous that when my sponsor was telling me, seek ye first the kingdom, he simply said this: put all your efforts into staying sober, son, and the rest of your life will take care of itself. And the moment you start peckering around your personal life, the more restless and irritable and discontent you're going to be. Put all your life into staying sober. Put all your efforts into staying sober. And the rest of your life, and isn't that true what happened here with me? Isn't it true that's what happened with a lot of us here? That the moment we put our efforts into staying sober and showing up at these little meetings and doing what we're supposed to do, they don't ask you if you're going to like it or how you feel about it. We are simply inconvenienced. We are divinely inconvenienced. Divinely inconvenienced by these things. And these little inconveniences seem to save my life. They bring me to you. And I was able to be inspired to work with other alcoholics because something happens to me. Every defective character seems to have been simmered down because of working with somebody else, working with other alcoholics when all else fails, you know. And I can't tell you, you know, lack of power is my dilemma. Lack of power is my dilemma. That was one of the first things I read in that book that got my attention. That I didn't humble myself because I wanted to find God. I humbled myself because there just wasn't anything else left to do. And I wanted to come back to you. And I had to start taking direction from people that I'd been making fun of for 8 years. And for the first time in my life, this entitled man who's laying in the gutter, looking down on the folks of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, became a step up. You became the thing to do. Because of my life, with me running, the best that I can do is lay in a gutter with that alcoholic torture, knowing perfectly well I'm going to die if I drink, and knowing perfectly well that I can't stop myself from drinking. There's a miracle here. Things happen here in Alcoholics Anonymous. Lack of power is my dilemma. And the only people that are searching for power are people who lack it. And isn't it amazing that maybe, just maybe, the reason that I am so hostile still, that maybe I get a little power from that. Maybe there's a little juice left in there to be able to move people in and out of your life when you have a little sharp tongue, a little sarcasm, a little temper going. Maybe you have a little power and control over people now, right? Maybe there's a sense of power with my sloth. Maybe there's a little sense of power I still get by coming and going when I want to, that little sense of entitlement. You know, maybe I still get a little power out of that. Maybe I still get a little power out of out of lust or something like that. I remember getting caught up in lust. I remember before I met my precious wife, Rosie, 7 years sober, you know, totally complacent. And I got obsessed with massage parlors. I had a $600 a month massage parlor habit, you know. I would even horny, and I was going into these places, coming out, you know. And at our greeting line, my sponsor used to be there shaking hands, and he would always be, you know, smelling for bourbon and beer on the newcomers, right? And I come prancing through there, and all he smells is, you know, baby oil and powder, you know what I mean? Totally obsessed with that. Because for an hour, I had a little power and control over a situation. Isn't it amazing how these little defects of character come back to you? Not because so much that you want them that, but you still get a little something out of it. Maybe you still get a little something out of it, you know? And because of Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't have to lean on my defects of character. Because of Alcoholics Anonymous, because of a sponsor and a home group and working with others, that maybe you can take a belief and turn it into inspiration. And maybe you can take that inspiration and turn it into perpetuation. But the bottom line, man, the end game's the same. I have nothing better to do than to be with you. I am a privileged man. Prayer isn't it, you know how we have these heroes? Think about this, if you will. All my life, I've had heroes. I've had baseball heroes. I had, you know, drag racing heroes. To this day, I love drag racing. You know, singers. You know, Otis Redding and Sam Cooke, and so I love these guys. You know, and Al Green. You know, all these heroes in my life. You know, and if they were to come down, wouldn't it be neat to talk to them for an hour? Wouldn't it be neat to sit with Al Green or Sam Cooke or, you know, Lou Rawls or something and you know, and talk to these guys? And then here you give me a power greater than yourself. Here you give me a God of my own understanding. And I can't give him 5 minutes in the morning. I can't give him a little prayer. And because of these defects of character, because of these things that drive me to you, I was able to move away some of these fears and finally start conjuring up a belief in a power greater than us. I spent 30 years trying to prove he didn't exist. And because of a commitment in a home group, here's self-seeking while trying to be kind. You know why I asked my sponsor to sponsor me? Is because here he was in and out of jail, and he was living like a king. And I thought, maybe if he's my sponsor, he can get me a job. And he did. He got me a coffee making job at the Big Book Group in Bellflower, and I'm still in that kitchen. Love that man to death. Love that man to death. And I finally found this God. It seemed like with these defects and having a commitment every week in my home group meetings and being on the coffee crew and stuff like that, that it dawned on me several years ago that the more I served you, the clearer he became. Isn't that amazing? That you took out these things just enough to serve you, and everything that I needed to believe in a power greater than myself would be coming from my commitments, would be coming from the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, my home. Something was going on when I was with you, and I scratched on that as a start. You said, God as I understand him. And I understood that when I was with you, I seemed to be a little happier, that I seemed to be happy to see people come in the room. And I didn't want nothing from them. Nothing. Not a thing, just to rub shoulders with them and stuff. And when it dawned on me that I spent 30 years to prove that he didn't exist, it dawned on me that he had to be there in order for me to prove he wasn't. When am I going to start becoming friends with this thing called a power greater than myself and be his servant. One of my amends to my father and to my sponsor to this day. I call him Pop because my prayer is I want to be a good son. Help me be a good son. And because of my sponsor and his grand sponsor, I feel that happening sometimes, man. I feel that happening, that maybe I'm doing something right for the first time in my life. Thank God I got a purpose in Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank God you can take a loser like me and do nothing more for them than make them useful to feel on top of the world. I drank because I was a nobody. I drank because I didn't know who in the hell I was. And I spent my entire life trying to be other things. And the moment I got done with all those images and took that inventory and went home and pondered what I had just written, and I came to you just a little member of Alcoholics. That's the neat thing about our 12th tradition. That's what I love, that I came to Alcoholics Anonymous to become somebody. And because of that 12th tradition and working with others, it ain't about becoming somebody. It's about becoming small enough to be useful to him. You don't got to be a speaker. All you got to do is show up, shake some hands, get a sponsor, and work with others. You are somebody. You're God's kid. You're God's kid. My sponsor, Johnny, told me, all I want you to do is, you don't have to do anything to prove that you love me, Larry. You don't have to. There's nothing you can do to prove that I love you anymore. There's nothing you can do to make me hate you. All I want you to do, son, is to carry this message of Alcoholics Anonymous. Go out there and help those new guys. That's all he wanted from me. And it wasn't too long ago, we're coming out of Polly's Pie. And I felt an arm on my shoulder and a little tap. I love you, son. I love you, son. I love you too. I love you too. Miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous. He's getting ready. He's getting me ready. Because now that I'm sober and I'm going to make these amends, there's going to be a whole totally different guy mailing that letter, paying that money back. Total different man. He's going to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. He's going to be a proud member of Alcoholics Anonymous. What a place to be. What a place to be for folks like me and you. If you're new in Alcoholics Anonymous, I hope you sincerely take a position. I hope you come to our book studies. Find out if you got this malady. Find out if you suffer from that alcoholic torture. Find out if these things that people are telling you, if you just stop drinking, everything will be all right. And me and you stop drinking and we're not all right. In fact, the longer we stay sober, the worse we feel, and we become restless, irritable, discontent, knowing perfectly well what's going to happen, knowing perfectly well the threats of the institutions, knowing perfectly well what's happening to us, our body. But all we wanted was to take a couple drinks, that to take that, and we're off and running totally against our will because we lack the power. You guys promised me that you would introduce me to a power greater than myself. And by golly, you certainly have done that. But it's not finding AA. And it's not finding God that's made the difference in my life. It's how am I going to serve him? Will I be a trusted servant? Can you count on me? Can you count on me to do these things? Can you count on me to carry this message? Or am I going to be one of these guys that hides out in the Zoom? Am I going to be one of these guys who just ducks and dodges the things in Alcoholics Anonymous? I hope not. I hope not. See, I am not part of any kind of AA dynasty. I've been blessed with an AA legacy. I've been blessed with a legacy that started with Bill and Bob, to Norman, Chuck, to Clancy and Johnny and my home group, and I am so proud to be hooked up with you folks. A guy that his entire life has been looking for his place in life is now hand in hand with folks. I have found my right place. I have found the people that I need to serve and where the people are going to come to be served. The great search is over. All my life I've been searching, and I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, and the great search is over. Everything I need to make me happy will be given to me by the program of Alcoholics in its entirety. And anything that hinders my happiness will be removed by the program of Alcoholics Anonymous in its entirety. There's a miracle here. Things happen here. Things happen here with me and you on a regular basis that sometimes we begin to take them for granted. And I am so happy that me and you are in this moment right now. Right now, this is the most fantastic place for me and you to be. Whether it be in a Zoom, whether it be in a garage, whether it be in a woman's club, whenever me and you get together, something happens. Something happens there. And I always want to return to that spot. I always want to return to that spot. So if you're new in Alcoholics Anonymous, all I can tell you is that I wish you well. And I hope you find a sponsor and a group of people and maybe start rubbing shoulders with the power greater than yourself. Because you won't have to look out the window and wonder where he's at. You won't have to scratch your head and see if he's behind the moon or anything like that. You'll realize that you're in the midst of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you are surrounded by people who should be dead, locked up, or insane. And because of a program called Alcoholics Anonymous, you're able to play in the most powerful thing in your life, and that's the evidence of a power greater. You are playing in the evidence, and I want to do it one more day. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Larry. That was just absolute power from start to finish. You know that I love